Alright, time for another round of nerding out in my attic about music. Woo! So I said before that the top 20 was too boring to cover anymore, but I gotta say, things are heading in the right direction. Looking back at my summer ranking, I was way too nice to it, and it probably would have been like 5 points lower at least. And the fall ranking wouldn't have been much better. That being said, this season there's definitely more good than bad, and a good mix of moods instead of dull nothing clogging up the chart. Of course, that problem still exists, but it's not as bad as it once was. This chart scored 13 points, which is pretty good and better than I think it's been in a while. As always, this is just my opinion. My tiering system looks like this. Any songs still in the top 20 that I've already talked about, and another one of these videos won't be here, and I'm not including that Flipped an Arrow song, nor the Lady Gaga one, because I'm not really sure what to think about the former. And with the latter, unlike most movie soundtrack songs, I'm fairly certain the context of the movie is consequential to the track, so I can't really compare it under these circumstances. Okay, with that all out of the way, let's get started with...
All I really wanna see is the I don't really need a D, I need the all a bad bitch need is the I got pants in the...
I've tried to defend Cardi B in the past. After all, her verses on Motorsport, Finesse, and especially No Limit all have good flows, creative bars, and are just all around solid. But on her solo material, she usually wastes her potential on these ugly beats and performances that suffer from a complete lack of charisma, which baffles me, because I know Cardi has plenty of it, but she just doesn't use it. And this is easily her worst song to date. It sounds like something I can make for $5 on SoundCloud. Chipmunk vocals, 2 piano-driven notes, a trap skitter, and loads of empty space. This isn't minimalism, it's just laziness. Good minimalism sounds purposeful, and usually lets you focus on the performances for a reason. This song reeks of non-effort the whole time, which makes its flaws even more blatant. Just no. And now we go from painfully boring to insufferably annoying. Now I'll admit, Cardi's verse on the song is actually pretty decent this time around. She actually puts effort and charisma into it, and it pays off. The same could be said for Selena's verse too. Both of them do a good job. So that being said, what is that noise? Yeah, that one god-awful sound immediately dragged this down into the garbage tier. Oh yeah, and Azuna squeals over it too, which just makes it even worse somehow. And it was a shock too, as I've been a fan of DJ Snake. He's pulled off many different moves with a lot of personality and good melodies, usually being a really promising producer. And then his comeback had the sound of a dolphin being rubbed with sandpaper. Wonderful. It's like if you finally return to your school after a whole year away, you're excited to reunite with some old friends and maybe even make some new ones. You're really looking forward to this fresh new year. And then on the first day you find out you're stuck with Well, I'll say this, I can definitely see why this kills at college parties. I mean, Sheck West sounds drunk out of his mind, so, makes sense. But, yeah, this blows. And it's not for a deep reason either, I mean, it just sounds bad. I get what it was trying to go for with this raw, filterless banger type thing, kinda like the quality music OG Mako made, and even Sheck himself pulled off with Gmail. But in order for that to work, the performance has to not sound like a dying animal. The beat is so thin and unpolished with those twinkly notes scratching against the bass, it's like Twinkle Twinkle Little Star from hell. And because of how loud the vocals are compared to the instrumental, we're forced to focus on Wes himself, which... yeah, he does that for the entire song, and it never stop. Let me put it like this. Good banger. Mo Bamba.
Hey Plankton, can our first song go like this? And then turn into one of those songs that goes...
The only part of this song I can really get behind is that one part that sounds like me whenever I fail my math exam.
Oh, fuck. Shit. Bitch. Had to have high hopes for a living. Shooting for the stars like one make a killing. Didn't ever die, but I always had a vision.
Ooh, I didn't want to put this so low because I really like Panic. Brendan Urie has a huge presence behind the mic in a similar way to Patrick Stump of Fall Out Boy, and his sheer power as a vocalist carries a lot of their music. Saturday Night Amen was a fantastic song that I wish was here instead. Good video too. Didn't expect Brendan Urie to go full Mortal Kombat mode.
Fatality.
Sadly, High Hopes sounds less like Fall Out Boy and more like AJR. Granted, it is still much better than about 95% of the click by default, but it still feels overpowering and kind of a mess. The horns and vocals are both really high-pitched and annoying, the drums are too fast, loud, and poke out of the mix way too frequently, the pre-chorus is too short to build up to anything, the chorus just explodes with zero tact and no control over itself, and as a whole, this song just feels incredibly rushed. It tries to capture the bombast and elegance of a Broadway show, which I can at least appreciate to an extent. But unfortunately, what we wind up with is essentially a Target commercial on steroids. I like Panic, and Brendan Urie's sheer presence saves this song from being totally worthless, but the band has and can do a lot better. Okay, who asked for a worse version of Lucid Dreams?
Now this looks like a job for me, so everybody just follow me, 'cause we need a little controversy, 'cause it feels so.
To me, Halsey is a very hit-or-miss artist. She's made some truly amazing music when she really puts her all into it, but more often than not, she chooses to waste her potential on these plodding, characterless, and quite pathetic songs. And this one sadly falls into the latter category. The piece of this that I actually like would be the production. The desaturated keys and more melodic parts of the production sound pretty nice, and Halsey doesn't sound half bad over them either for the most part. However, this song is still this slow because wow, the lyrics suck. I mean, forget Juice WRLD, this is just plain embarrassing to listen to. The whole song is just Halsey nasally whining way out of her vocal range about how G-Eazy can't live without her, and yet he mistreated her so badly, and yeah, that kinda defeats your point. For as dull and occasionally embarrassing as G-Eazy can be, at least he genuinely sounds like he's having fun and doesn't have "not over it" written all over his forehead. Yeah, the same guy who said this
'Cause I'm fucking your girlfriend and there's nothing you can do about it.
actually looks good in this song by comparison, my god. Oh, and it also doesn't help that the hook is kinda irritating. Marshmello's a bit of a mixed bag. He's had fantastic music, and he's had god-awful music, but this is somewhere in between. I was disappointed that Bastille's feature didn't do much for this song, as Bastille's solo work has an element of wonder and exploration that Happier just doesn't have. Marshmello's production sounds plastic and fake, the verses are way too generic for a band like Bastille, and the drop itself sounds overprocessed and uninteresting. The lyrics are mature and likable enough, and nothing about this song is outright terrible, but the most interesting thing about this song is how Miranda Cosgrove somehow aged backwards in the video. Weird to think how the dumb character from a less popular show is now the biggest pop star on the planet, while everyone from iCarly just kind of fell off. I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm still waiting on that Gibby comeback.
Been through some bad shit, I should be a savage. Who would've thought it turned me to a savage? Rather be.
Oh boy, the big one. A lot of people seem to really hate this one, and honestly, I think it could have turned out a lot worse. I mean, Ariana's still talented, the instrumental is fine, and the rap verse is surprisingly competent. It's not a song worth getting too angry about to me, but like,
Stop watching, my neck is fuzzy.
This right here is my sway.
why? I mean, sure, Soulja Boy's been a huge influence on music from a marketing and artistic image standpoint, but when it comes to his actual music,
Girls on me heavy 'cause I look so sexy.
yeah, why him again? Grande's style is not that, and her breathy delivery sounds really awkward and just doesn't sit well with me. Not to mention, this dark, edgy style just hasn't worked for her in general. From the cluttered mess that was Focus, to the structureless disaster that was The Light Is Coming, and now this. Seven Rings isn't as bad as those songs, in fact it's actually pretty decent, but I'm still struck with the same general disconnect that those songs had. Grande's a great vocalist and has a wide range of talents, but a Soulja Boy influenced song isn't really one of them. I mean, could you imagine if she did this on her other stuff?
Something about, something about, something about.
Back home smoking legal. I got more slaps than the Beatles. Foreign shit running.
So, this song exists. Honestly, I don't have much for this one, so I'm just gonna say, given the circumstances, that I can't wait for the Pusha T Drake collab in a few years' time. I've got high hopes for that one. Oh hey, it's the Latin version of Cheap Thrills.
Baby, I don't need dollar bills to have fun tonight.
I mean, it's not a direct rip off the same way Juice WRLD pulled, and the beat sounds bouncy enough, so it's fine, I guess. Dre's hook is alright, and I like Bad Bunny's deep vocal tone. His voice makes it a lot easier for him to hold a song than his peers. And, you know, especially if the alternative is this. I hope Bad Bunny sticks around for a while. Decent song.
Ice water turn Atlantic. Night calling in a phantom. Told them, hold it, don't you panic. Took an island, fled the mansion. Drop the roof, more expansion.
This is a song I want to like more than I actually do. Travis Scott and Offset both hold their own, and the steel drum pattern is catchy enough, but there's just something keeping me from fully embracing this. Maybe it's the absurd amount of empty space in between measures, maybe it's the steel drum pattern increasing in volume toward the end for no reason. Hey buddy, might want to check your mic there. Or maybe it's him.
Pull up in a demon on guard.
The thing with Kodak Black is that he works really well in songs like No Flockin' or Lockjaw, as the beats are dark, slow, grimy, and spacious. His voice has this ominous presence on those that make for really good tracks, but all this song has is a weird steel drum, meaning that his goopy voice oozes over it like slime and works about as well as pouring mustard on ice cream. It's not a bad song, but it could have been better. Also, can we please stop making these messy, convoluted meta shot videos? Like, yeah, cool, I know how a green screen works, I don't need a full-on tutorial, thanks. In fact, let me take a crack at this real quick.
DA got that dope. Niggas been counting me out. I'm counting my bullets, I'm loading my clips, I'm writing down names, I'm making a list, I'm checking it twice and I'm getting them hit.
Fitting, this is exactly middle place given it reflects my mixed feelings on J. Cole as a whole. Basically, this song has a good idea behind it with relatively sound execution, and J. Cole has a ton of skill and reach as an MC. But in the grand scope of things, the instrumental sounds kind of flimsy after about halfway through, and the concept doesn't amount to anything that awe-inspiring beyond J. Cole acting like he's the messiah splitting the waters between hip-hop generations. This blatantly arrogant attitude almost immediately infers that he's one of the greats or the best rapper in the game. And, how about new? Yes, I can appreciate J. Cole's admittedly vast knowledge as a veteran, and his artistic vision and logic is definitely stronger than that of his peers. But similar to someone like Hobson, a false smog of pride surrounding your entire arc as a musician, solely because you don't rap about sex, money, and drugs 110% of the time is kind of distracting, not gonna lie. That 21 Savage song that literally missed this list by a hair was much better. Not to mention with a much better J. Cole verse. It had more good points, better flows, and less fake improvisation. In the end, it's a decent song, but not a great one.
The ladies love luxury. That's why they all fuck with me. Out here with the moves, like I invented smooth. You can't.
I wasn't really sure what to make of this song at first, and then I realized this is just a bootleg version of Young, Wild, and Free. Same carefree vibe, both hooks are performed by Bruno Mars, and both songs have two rappers handling the verses. Oh yeah, and also both songs are about weed, but that was kind of a given. Except this song just doesn't click as well. The hook doesn't sound as natural or sticky, the melodies aren't as good, and the two verses are fine, but they don't share the same chemistry Wiz and Snoop did. But Young, Wild, and Free was a great song, so a less good version of it is still decent for me. So this is Ariana's first number one, huh? Not really what I was expecting, but I guess it did turn out for the better. I mean, this is definitely a good song. Grande's soft and warm vocal inflection works nicely off the light, airy instrumental, with the playful innocence of the melody and joyful synth tones. It's a pretty sound, and following the grim 2018, I think it's good that this is the first number one hit of 2019. I'm not as crazy about this direction for Grande compared to songs like Into You, or Dangerous Woman, or even God is a Woman, but the song is fine enough, even if it is an extreme lightweight, hence why it's more toward the middle of this ranking. My main gripe with the song though is that Ariana Grande can't really sell this sort of passive-aggressive, cold yet genuine vibe. This kind of thing would work much better for someone with a more dominant tone like Amy Winehouse or Dua Lipa. And like with Seven Rings, while Ariana's talent can be applied to many things, this portrayal isn't really one of them. I mean, don't get me wrong, her performance isn't bad, far from it actually. But at the same time, it's pretty obvious the main purpose of this song's existence is for teenage girls to post it on their Instagram pages as a coping mechanism for pretty much anything related to a breakup. I mean, let's be real here. Do you really think anyone is gonna have this reaction? Man, I really thought 5SOS would fade into obscurity after a few years, but nope, here they are 3 years later with a totally different sound, one that suits them a lot better too. The reason Youngblood is a significant improvement over something like this is because it's an effective mix of their old teen rock sound and electronic synth pop, which is a combination that's used very well. The vocals sound polished and bombastic without coming across too pandering like they did on earlier songs, and the guitar work has a great balance of grit and restraint behind it. It knows exactly when to be aggressive or when to slow down. It would legitimately work as a great anthem if it weren't for one thing: there's no climax. The hook legit sounds like an extended pre-chorus, leaving the entire song to feel like one incredibly long build-up with no payoff. And for a song designed to pump up the listener, that's kind of a problem. There's 2/3 of a great song here, but they forgot to include the third piece, creating a huge gap on the song structure. A good song, but it's also an underwhelming one. It's a very good R&B song, if a bit forgettable as a whole. In general, I do like Khalid as a performer with his lush vocal capabilities, but in terms of actual song, he rarely really makes anything that amazing. A lot of his stuff just ends up being not bad, but kind of sleepy and unexciting. And while Better still does suffer from those setbacks, it's still a really potent track otherwise, and unlike Love Lies or Young, Dumb and Broke, which rubbed me the wrong way for similar reasons, this is smooth from start to finish, and definitely one of Khalid's better songs. Good song, worthwhile listen. This is a lot more minimal than Post usually is, and I'm glad to say that works out for the better here. This really hollow, buzzy sound uses its simplicity to make a very unique song. It's not like anything I've ever heard before. Post Malone also sounds very polished, which contrasts off the instrumental to make this echo-like sound, and it's very appealing to listen to. Not really much to it, just another really good Post Malone song. If this is the direction Post's third album is going in, sure, why not, I'm in.
She used to meet me on the east side in the city with the sun on set. And every day you know that we ride.
Now this is what a good Halsey song sounds like. It's a personal and heavily detailed glance from the perspective of two former lovers looking back at what could have been. And despite the fact that it resembles a diary entry, it actually doesn't sound tacky or melodramatic in the slightest. It's incredibly chilled and mellowed out, which was absolutely the right approach, as it allows the narrative to shine through more easily. And the lush vocals from both performers wash over the lyrics like smooth butter, not to mention the surprising amount of chemistry they share despite telling different stories. Blanco also did a great job capturing the feel of reminiscing and splitting apart, and it really does elevate the song even further. The song's been pretty much unanimously praised as far as I've seen thus far, and it's easy to see why. Hey, you guys want to hear Sicko?
Made this here with all the ice on in the booth at the gate outside.
Despite my immense frustration that this was the big hit from Astroworld over countless others, I'm still willing to admit it's a great song as a standalone piece. Travis and Drake combined their styles into 3 different beat sections, the first being a typical quirky and ominous Travis sound, sort of reminiscent of Rodeo, while the last one is a typical Take Keith Drake beat, and easily the best out of the bunch, might I add. And finally, the middle section is this weird mix of the two with a bunch of samples thrown in there, yet all of it comes together to make a replayable gem with every beat switching off at just the right time. Drake and Travis both have equally good performances, meaning that it's the best thing Drake's done in a while, and an average Tuesday for Travis. Tons of quotable lines, distinct qualities, and oddball production that make the song interesting from start to finish, and the transitions all feel justified and not as distracting as you'd think they'd be, even if my first reaction was this.
Going on you with the pick and roll. Younger flame, he in sicko mode.
Whoopsie. Now behold.
Although I'd like to stress, not the best version of this song. This isn't fake, by the way, this is real. Link in the description.
Then you're left in the dust, unless I stuck by you. You're a sunflower.
From what I've heard, Sunflower is that one song that's pretty much unanimously agreed to be good, and it's not hard to see why. The quirky production with the jumpy synths, detailed percussion pattern, and gorgeous guitars all create a very calm and soothing experience. It sounds a lot richer than one would expect for what's essentially a movie trailer. The performances on this are also just stellar. Sway Lee perfectly captures the youthful and naive bliss of the character and their innocent, simple love, which is contrasted by Post Malone's more sultry and sorrowful performance, expressing the sacrifice the character must make in fading away from this relationship because, well, it's freaking Spider-Man. You know, can't have another girlfriend at risk of falling off the top of a crumbling building. Spider-Man's theme song turned out to be really good. Hopefully the next Marvel character will... Oh yeah, forgot about that. Well, I guess Eminem abusing his vocal cords is a perfect metaphor for a villain, so, I don't know, gotta give points for accuracy, I guess. Not expecting this. You could make a very reasonable argument as to why Sunflowers should be at number 1. After all, it is more compellingly written, has a more interesting story, and had more complex production, but Drip Too Hard just really connects with me. It's strange how much of a complete 180 this is from Lil Baby's last single, which was one of the worst things I've heard in recent memory. Yes, indeed, was bland, boring, had no energy, awful lyrics, whiny vocals, not to mention terrible mixing. Yet Drip Too Hard is the exact opposite in pretty much every way. The guitar lick anchoring the song is insanely sticky and never gets tiring. The vocals sound multi-dimensional with not a single forgettable note. And Baby and Gunna actually play off each other with their voices. They have some actual chemistry instead of just sounding identical in the most monotone way possible. The hook is great even with that weird neighing noise, and the lyrics fade into the background almost immediately, which, given how that album turned out, is probably for the best. Right down to the core dynamics of this song. Everything just feels right. Hopefully we'll get more stuff like this in the future from the duo. Who knows, maybe the album will be decent this time around. Video and
Just kidding, bitch!
Hello, Beats, holla at me.
who wanted the Uptown Funk guy to collab with Post Hannah Montana because that was genius.
With this broken silence, by thunder crashing in the dark.
This song actually has a decent amount of radio traction, but it still ain't in the top 20, probably thanks to streaming's ridiculous monopoly in the industry. But hopefully this will pick up anyway, because this is phenomenal. Ronson's no stranger to deeply layered and elegant pop songs with a very distinct layer of grandeur that's always made him stand out as a producer. And this song is no exception. The swelling strings, the bouncy guitar tones, and the beautifully melancholic atmosphere, courtesy of not only Ronson but also Miley's vocal performance, all comes together wonderfully. In fact, Miley's just as crucial as the instrumental, which I never expected to say ever. And yeah, this is the best performance of her entire career by several light years. There's even a hint of country thrown in there, and it gets elevated so much by the instrumental that it feels more genuinely country than most mainstream offerings of the genre nowadays. Great song, really deserves better.
When you know the day, my sad girl, I know go lie, I be feeling so lonely. So not only you, they make me feel this, I be feeling.
I know the album bomb already happened, but given the Latin craze right now, I could totally see this having a comeback, and I really hope it does. Latin and trap aren't exactly an ideal fusion, if the past year is any indication, but Metro Boomin does an amazing job as usual regardless. Dave Balvin teams up with Sway Lee, Offset, and that one guy from One Dance, and it totally pays off. All were great choices for this song. And Metro's trademark mixing gives it this ethereal presence I've never really heard before when matched with a Latin vibe. It's a highlight off an already amazing album that totally deserves a spot in the top 20.
Hands on my neck, dollars big hits, hop off a jet, barely get rest, cash through the mud and I get a check. You selling run on my pants and my chest, Chanel dress, clean up a mess, I eat a flesh.
Now this is a song off Astroworld that needs more attention. This is definitely one of my favorites from the album, and unlike Sicko Mode, which feels tonally confused and too disconnected in comparison, Yosemite rides this exotic feel for the entire song with no issues whatsoever. The flutes and guitars mesh together in a way that makes it sound like one instrument, yet it never feels cluttered. The flow fits the time signature perfectly and couldn't be a better fit. Travis's performance is great as always, and to me it defines why and so many others like Astroworld so much. This song didn't actually chart on the Hot 100, but I still think it has the potential to get huge given your Marshmellos and DJ Snakes on top of the world right now, and this song is quite similar to their styles in some way. I've never really been a Cheat Codes fan. Their music always struck me as really thin and not very well produced, with their rather unpleasant tones dominating their stuff. However, I've loved Little Mix for a while now. They're like the infinitely better version of Fifth Harmony, so it's no wonder they've lasted longer, and they absolutely kill it here. Cheat Codes capture the vibe of desperation better than expected, which Little Mix works off of really well, with great vocal harmonizations even when pitch shifted into oblivion, which is pretty impressive. The melodies here are also much better than on most pop songs in this lane, as it feels multi-layered and more invested in its composition than a lot of other EDM. I could see how the drop would be annoying for some people, but for me it capitalizes on the drama in the song perfectly and fits in all the better for it. Great track, check it out if you haven't heard it. Is it just me, or is French Montana actually kinda good now?
No stylish, no Chanel, Saint Laurent, Gucci bag, huh?
French Montana has no personality. Nothing distinguishes him from any other rapper, and yet he's had multiple excellent songs. Usually they're of course carried by others, but this time he's the lead artist, only accompanied by an average Drake feature. You'd think he'd drop the ball given the circumstances, yet somehow it's quite possibly his best one to date. The giant amount of auto-tune on his voice works perfectly, as normally it would strip the artist of the character. But Montana has none to begin with, so it ends up working out and gives his voice a really cool effect.
Fuck, they ain't talking about fast talk, running.
The beat sounds like it came straight from the medieval times, although that might be just me. The hook is one of the best I've heard in a while, and in general, it's just a great song. Really hoping this rebounds and becomes a real hit. Alright, finish that up. Up next, I'm thinking I'll make a top 10 list dedicated to one person. Might even turn that into a common thing, but knowing me, who knows.